Welcome to this week's video blog from Preston Respect. This week we're looking at the whole question of homelessness and the housing crisis in modern Britain. And we started filming inside the Fox Street Centre in Preston. This at the moment is under refurbishment, but the Fox Street is one of the few shelters for rough sleepers in Preston. And when people think about homelessness, it's often rough sleepers that they think about. Now, if we were to think back 20 or 25 years ago, stepping over people who were sleeping in our railway stations or in our streets was an incredibly unusual thing, but unfortunately it's a fairly common feature of town and city life across the length and breadth of Britain. But homelessness and rough sleepers is only the tip of the iceberg in the housing crisis in Britain. As well as homelessness, we also have the people who are forced to live with their parents longer. Young couples who have children who live with grandparents or other relatives and don't get access to the housing market. And we also have the problem of people whose salaries in Preston, the average salary is £15,000 to £16,000 a year, and young people on those salaries who simply can't afford a mortgage when terraced house properties sell for at least £100,000. So these are the issues that we're going to be looking at today, and this is why we started in the homeless centre in Fox Street. The problem, of course, is that today, when you want to get access to the housing market, the most common way is to get a mortgage. But it's not always been like this. In the post-Second World War period, there was a rapid expansion of council housing building, and in parts of the country, where I was brought up just outside Glasgow, the majority of the population lived and was brought up in council housing. But in Preston, council houses, in its various different forms like these, has been sold off, either to Avonquest, which in turn has been brought over by a large corporation called Cllr, or as part of something called the Gateway Community Transfer Programme. This means in Preston there are now no council housing, but there are social landlords. But renting your house from a social landlord doesn't give you many guarantees. It doesn't offer you the guarantee of low rent. It doesn't give you a guarantee of proper maintenance. It doesn't give you the guarantee of an assured tenancy. And you don't have the democratic accountability that came from council housing, where if you had a problem, you could go to your local councillor and see that the problem was addressed in the open democratic ways through local government. So social landlords, social rented landlords, offer none of these guarantees for tenants. But there's another problem. In Preston at the moment there are 3,000 families waiting for housing, and the social rented sector simply cannot match that demand. The house building programme that's taking place in this city and in other towns and cities across the country cannot keep up with the spiralling demand of young families which need proper, decent homes. Then we have one other problem. When people think about council housing, they think about high-rise flats and they think about poor quality council house building. Now, we would be silly to say that that wasn't part of the problem, and many of the council houses that were built in the post-Second World War period were of inferior quality, were mass-produced housing for the working classes. There wasn't enough effort put in to community development, to community space, to decent building materials that would provide a warm and non-damp free and secure home for those who lived in them. But these aren't insurmountable problems, and they are not an argument against council house building per se. Because there was mistakes in the past doesn't mean it always has to be like that. For almost 30 years now, governments in this country have refused to invest in council housing. They've refused to build council housing, and they've refused to allow local authorities the money from council house sales to reinvest in existing stock or in council house estates. This has been a disaster for the whole question of housing provision in this country. But if we want to make sure that our children and future generations have somewhere safe, warm and secure to live, if we want to make sure that housing doesn't become a major problem for families, and if we want to make sure that we deal with the whole question of homelessness, then we have to restart a council building programme. It means up and down the country we have to stop selling off council housing, but we have to start building new council house estates. The Brown government have said that they are willing to consider such a project.
In some cities like Leeds, the Conservative and Lib Dem Council have said that they are going to start a house building programme. This is the future. If we want to secure a future for our families, then we have to build council housing. We have to offer secure and assured tenancies, and we have to take the problem of housing out of the private sector and bring it into the state-controlled sector, where we can provide good quality homes in decent built estates with assured tenancies and low rent. This is the future if we want to make housing less of a problem for our people.